All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the real reason you forget things. And here's a spoiler. It has almost nothing to do with how much space you've got in your brain. Nope. It's all about where you're pointing the spotlight of your mind.
You know this feeling for sure. You get a text with one of those two-factor authentication codes. You're holding it in your head, you're walking from your phone to your computer, and then your roommate, your partner, someone asks you a simple question. And just like that, poof, the code is gone. It just completely vanishes. So what on earth is happening in that moment?
Well, the classic idea is that, your memory just filled up. But that's not really what's going on. The real culprit here isn't a lack of storage space at all. It's more like a traffic jam in your attention. You've only got so much of it, and the tricky part is you can only point it at one place at a time.
So let's dig into this whole vanishing number problem, because when we do, it actually reveals something really profound about how our working memory is, wired.
Okay, to really get this, we've got to look at this super interesting theory from cognitive science. It's called the Time-Based Resource Sharing Model, or TBRS for short. Now, the core idea is it's actually pretty simple, but it's totally revolutionary. It says that thinking and remembering, they aren't two different things happening in your brain. They're actually locked in this constant battle, competing for one single precious resource, your attention.
And the absolute best way to picture this is to think of your attention like a single spotlight. Just one. And it's shining on the stage inside the theater of your mind. So let's break down exactly how this spotlight works.
Okay, so picture this. The information you're trying to hold on to, like that security code, right? Imagine it's a poster hanging on the wall of this mental theater. Now, the theater is dark, so over time, that poster naturally starts to fade. To keep it clear, you have to shine your spotlight of attention right on it. Scientists call this refreshing it. But, and here's the big but, here's the catch. The moment someone asks you a question, you have to swing that one spotlight away from the poster and point it at the new task. Let's call them the actors on the stage. And if you keep that spotlight on the actors for just a little too long, when you finally swing it back to where the poster was, it's faded completely. It's gone. That is forgetting.
So this brings us right to the central conflict, the big idea of this whole model. It's not about how much you can hold in your head, it's about what you choose to focus on from moment to moment. It is a constant and totally unavoidable trade-off.
And check this out. This is a direct quote from the research, and it just lays it all out so perfectly. It basically says that as the cognitive load, the CL, of whatever you're doing goes up, the amount of stuff you can hold in your working memory goes down. It's a perfect inverse relationship. So the key takeaway here? The harder your brain has to work on one thing, the faster those other things you're trying to remember just fade away.
So that begs the question, right? How in the world do scientists actually measure this cognitive load? Like, how do you put a number on how much of your mental spotlight a task is hogging?
Well, within this model, it's actually defined really, really precisely. Cognitive load is just the percentage of time your attention, your spotlight, is busy with a task. That's it. So the higher that percentage, the less time you have available for that all-important job of shining the light back on the memories you're trying not to forget.
And this just illustrates the whole thing perfectly. So, in a study back in 2004, researchers tested this exact idea. They had people try to remember some letters while at the same time reading digits out loud. Now, when they read the digits slowly, that's a low cognitive load, their memory for the letters was awesome, almost perfect. But when they had to read those exact same digits really fast, a high cognitive load, their memory for the letters just fell off a cliff. Think about that. Same information, same person, same brain, the only thing that changed was the demand on their attention.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, because all of this leads to the model's most radical, most powerful prediction. Seriously, this is a prediction that basically challenges decades of thinking about how our memory works.
See, the old idea, the one we all kind of assumed was true, was that interference was specific. So a verbal task, like talking, messes with your verbal memory. A spatial task, like trying to picture a Mac, messes with your spatial memory. Makes sense, right? But the TBRS model comes along and makes this absolutely wild claim. It says, hey, if everything shares that one single resource, that one spotlight of attention, then any task, as long as it's hard enough, should be able to disrupt any kind of memory.
And guess what? That is exactly what researchers found in a 2010 study. They gave people a really demanding verbal task, and it made them forget spatial locations on a screen. Then they gave them a really demanding spatial task, and it made them forget verbal things like letters. This was the smoking gun. It proved that the bottleneck in our brain isn't different types of memory. The bottleneck is the single, shared spotlight of attention. It's all about the cognitive load, not the type of task.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does all this actually mean for us in our daily lives? Well, understanding this model gives us a completely new way, a really powerful way to think about our own minds and how we can better manage our focus.
For one thing, this model gives us the clearest scientific explanation for why true multitasking is, well, a total myth. Your brain isn't running two programs at the same time. No way. It's just frantically, and I mean frantically, switching that one single spotlight back and forth, just hoping that none of those posters on the wall fade completely while it's looking somewhere else.
So in the end, it really all boils down to this one simple truth. Your attention is your mind's most critical and most limited resource. It is the single engine for both thinking and remembering. Every single moment, you're making a choice. So, the only question left to ask yourself is, where are you going to point your spotlight next?